Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, the women who are working hard to convince Senegalese communities not to carry out female genital mutilation. This despite the practice being banned for nearly 20 years. We meet Alice Gautreau, a French midwife for Doctors Without Borders who's now co-authored a book on her experiences in saving the lives of female refugees as they cross the Mediterranean. And also how the Me Too movement has even reached the streets of Rio de Janeiro during Carnival celebrations. But we begin in Senegal, where female genital mutilation has been outlawed since 1999. Still, the practice hasn't entirely disappeared, so a new generation of women is taking action to put a stop to this harmful tradition by going from town to town. Their organisation is called Ne touche pas à ma sœur, or Hands Off My Sister in English. Charles Pellegrin has the story.
All the girls here who have been mutilated like I have, raise your hands. Raise your hands so people can see.
This group of young women organizes meetings on a regular basis. Their goal is to change people's attitudes.
I have the right to report anyone. Even if it's my own mother, I will report her. I'm Senegalese and I want to help other Senegalese girls.
The organization also takes its message on the road, going door to door to inform the population.
Hi, how are you?
They're in the courtyard of the family home, and their first contact is with the father, the head of the household.
In this case, everything is cut off. Nothing is left. So the girl will feel pain her whole life. When she's being mutilated, her legs and hands are spread apart, and she starts screaming in pain.
I had no idea that that's what they cut off from the woman.
The conversation extends to other family members.
I was mutilated. Sometimes I can't even urinate.
Aissatou Balde is listening carefully. She's about to speak up for the first time in front of her father.
I was mutilated when I was 6 years old. I still feel pain. I lost a lot of blood. It hurts a lot when I have my period. And I'm afraid of what giving birth will be like. I know what I went through, but until now I didn't know who to talk to. Now I'm saying everything.
Dina Boumbalo knows all too well what Aissatou is going through. She performed female genital mutilations for 29 years.
The girls would sit here.
She knows the ceremony and the song that goes with it like the back of her hand.
My grandmother used to perform female genital mutilation. I just inherited it from my family. I didn't know any better. The difference now is that we know that genital mutilation causes a lot of problems for girls.
Every year, about 100 communities let go of the practice of female genital mutilation in Senegal. Just under a quarter of Senegalese women have been mutilated, and the number will keep getting smaller, thanks in part to the hard work of these girls in Kolda.
Now, the number of African refugees fleeing to Europe via the Mediterranean continues to rise, with rescue ships attempting to help where they can. According to the International Organisation for Migration, already in the first few months of 2018 alone, scores of people are dying as they attempt to make the crossing. Last year, a young French midwife working with Doctors Without Borders joined the Aquarius rescue ship. Alice Gautreau has co-written a book about her experiences, which has just been published in French, and she joins me in the studio today. Alice, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, while we're very used to seeing lots of images of men, and particularly young men, making this very dangerous crossing, there's also an increasing number of women who are doing it as well. What sort of stories did you hear from them when you met up with them?
Well, yes, indeed, there are a lot of women doing the crossing, about 15 to 20% of the ones that we find, and they've all gone through the same migration route as the other migrants from West Africa generally, all across Niger, all across the Saharan desert into Libya, and they've met with the same kind of difficult times in the detention centers, and of course suffered lots and lots of horrendous things along the way, including...
Can you give us some idea exactly of some of those tales that you were told?
Well, there's everything that can happen at home, what we know from what happens in West Africa, for example, suffering forced marriages, sexual violence, female genital mutilation. All of this is part of their past, but then there's also all the sexual exploitation that can happen on the way, repetitive rapes, and also just being sold from one owner to the next throughout the route. So all of these are common stories that we hear from these girls.
Now, you begin your book with the extraordinary story of Constance, a young woman from Cameroon who began giving birth as she makes that crossing from Libya across to Europe. And you actually met her a couple of hours later. Tell me more about her story.
So Constance left Cameroon about 9 months before we met her. She was with her boyfriend at the time. By the time she got to Libya, they got separated and put into 2 different detention centres. And by the time she was 9 months pregnant, she managed to escape. And she suddenly found herself on a beach in Libya. And she was pushed out at sea as she was having her first contractions. By the time we got to her, she'd given birth for about 2 hours already.
And she was surrounded by predominantly men, I think around some 100 men, mainly from Morocco.
Yes.
And what was their response to her as she began to give birth?
So Constance told me that the men were shouting at her to shut up during her contractions and not being super helpful. Obviously, we have to imagine that everybody was extremely scared and that none of these men had probably ever seen a woman give birth. But I can't imagine the distress that Constance must have felt at that point when she knows her baby is coming and all the help she's getting is someone telling her to shut up.
And when you met her, you realised that she still had the placenta inside her body. Now, that must have been very dangerous.
Yes, so it was the rescue team that saw her first with the baby still attached, and I was inside caring for the women. I was inside of our ship caring for the women we already had, and they called me out on deck to meet her as soon as she got onto the ship, and I took her to the hospital on board, and we finished the delivery as I would have with any woman I've delivered in my career so far.
Constance's story, however, is reflective of the tales of many women who are undergoing this experience. What, in your opinion, needs to be done in order to meet the needs of these female refugees?
I mean, there is so much to be done for this because what they go through at home already, MSF does a lot of work back in Nigeria or back in Côte d'Ivoire or stuff like this. So we do work with women there, and that's work that needs to be done. But also we need to see how we welcome them once they get to Europe. There's been a report very recently about the sexual violence and the rate of HIV for female refugee people in Europe, and that's absolutely dramatic. So we need to look at how we care for them once they're here and remember that they're a very vulnerable group.
How did this experience change you?
It's difficult to explain how much empathy and compassion you have to show when you're on the ship, and it's opened my eyes to a whole new world, to a whole new level of human horror. The capacity of humans to cause harm to other humans is simply horrendous, but also the capacity of humans to be kind to other humans is absolutely fabulous as well. And we must remember this, and I think it has given me more will to stay with the good humans and try to keep sending out good messages like this and just spreading the love, really.
Of course, not to mention the extraordinary capacity by humans to survive.
Yes, of course, and their amazing resilience as well.
Alice, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Rio de Janeiro's annual Carnival is known for its scantily clad samba dancers, and the party season is often synonymous with debauchery in the city streets. But amid the revelry, serious accusations of groping, sexual harassment and even rape surface every year. Now, a handful of feminist groups are demanding that men keep their hands to themselves, as Olivia Salazar-Winspear reports.
Dressing up as cows, hens and piranha fish for the Rio Carnival, these are not just eye-catching animal costumes, they're all words used in Portuguese to mean prostitute. These women are using their fancy dress to draw attention to the misogyny and sexual harassment that often goes on during the party season.
A guy came up and started saying that since I wasn't wearing a t-shirt and I'm pregnant, not wearing a top, he thought that I was doing something wrong, and he basically just started insulting me.
This year's festivities have taken a more feminist tone than in previous years, and if Brazil has been slow to adopt the Me Too movement, some of the block parties have taken up the flame, calling for a harassment-free carnival and urging partygoers to dance on the face of machismo. And some men are stepping up to be part of the solution.
Men have to understand that they did a lot of stuff wrong for a long time, and now they have to start doing the right thing and not have attitudes that compromise women's integrity.
Rio's carnival takes place at the hottest time of the year, and with heavy drinking and huge crowds throwing people into close proximity, many women report having experienced some sort of harassment. The city's police received more than 2,100 calls about violence against women last year. The municipal authorities are trying to crack down, but some say the first thing that needs to change is mentalities.
The woman has to know that it's not her fault, that the clothes that she's wearing do not matter, that the place where she is does not matter, or if she's been drinking, none of that justifies abuse.
A message that will be carried through the streets by these samba schools, exercising their right to party in a spirit of security and respect.
And that's it for now, and you can connect with us via our Facebook page, that's France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. Thanks for your feedback so far, and yes, keep those comments and ideas coming in. So until our next show, bye for now.